Welcome to Engage, leading conversations that matter. Join in the conversation. Send an email to engage@cfpublic.org. Send a recorded talkback message on the free Central Florida Public Media app. Leave a voicemail by calling 407-273-2300, extension 246. Engage is made possible with the support of listeners like you.
You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Coming up, mission to Mars. We'll discuss plans on the horizon to make Mars habitable, with the UCF researcher developing ways to accommodate human life on the planet. Also, the sounds of reggae will be heard throughout Lake Nona this weekend. We'll explain why. First, though, tourism is one of Florida's biggest industries. Visitors contributed more than $100 billion to the economy just last year. We're learning the state's official tourism marketing corporation removed the LGBTQ travel section from its website. Visit Florida was created as a public-private partnership by the Florida legislature to be the official source for travel planning for visitors around the world. The LGBTQ plus area of Visit Florida's website had referenced the Sunshine State being a draw for people of all orientations and appealing to a gay community looking for acceptance. Gina Duncan is CEO and president of the Pride Chamber in Orlando that promotes the LGBTQ plus business community in Central Florida. She joined Engage producer Richard Copeland just this morning to talk about the change. She starts the conversation by explaining what she's hearing from businesses in this region.
There is concern from our travel and leisure members who are concerned about the direction of this and other things that are somewhat overdue, really, at this point. You know, we took this volley from the DeSantis administration in reference to the state coming out with broad, vague, and extremist measures that were alienating and demonizing the LGBTQ community. We feel like we're on the better side of that. We have turned the tide in Tallahassee. We defeated 21 of the 22 anti-LGBTQ bills last session. So we feel that the extremist conservatism that has been coming out of the DeSantis's office has stemmed and certainly chilled along with his presidential hopes. So it's time that, you know, the community and all of our members, all of our businesses that support travel and leisure in Central Florida and certainly across the state of Florida understand that and continue to be open and welcoming for everyone to come to Central Florida.
Well, you mentioned some of the legislative challenges to some of these conservative policies, but at the same time, this is a state where the DeSantis administration has successfully challenged DEI and basically every incarnation. There's policies that have passed attacking transgender rights. The state's opposition to the federal Title IX updates that would expand anti-discrimination protections to LGBTQ students. Talk about the challenges these present insofar as promoting the mission of the Pride Chamber to, quote, recognize, promote, and improve LGBT business and the LGBT business community.
Yeah, and that's a really important point in that in looking at this culture war against the LGBTQ community, there's several factors to kind of lay the framework and foundation in reference to understanding these really hateful bills that have been launched and these laws that have been passed over the last several legislative sessions. These bills are launched on a national basis, coming out of organizations like the Heritage Foundation, co-authors of Project 2025, and similar in scope in reference to attacking communities like the LGBTQ community. These bills and these laws have been written purposely to be vague and to be broad so that they're hard to interpret, they're hard to enforce. And we find that not only local governments, city governments, county governments find these laws hard to enforce. We also find that the general population has a hard time in reference to understanding what they really mean. Let's take, for example, the transgender bathroom ban. You know, this ban is supposedly to ensure that people are safe in restrooms. This applies only to state controlled facilities in reference to restrooms. And the way it's written, it basically says that someone can be challenged in a restroom for not being in a restroom that aligns with their assigned sex at birth. The transgender bathroom ban basically says you can only use the restroom of your assigned sex at birth, which of course erases and alienates gender nonconforming people and transgender people in restrooms. But how is that interpreted by the general public? We have seen that transgender people have been challenged in restaurants. This law does not apply to private owned entities, only state controlled entities like the Orlando International Airport, for example. It could be enforced there, but not in restrooms, not in restaurants. So this is a great example to show how these bills, how these laws are written in such a way that the general population misunderstands them. We've heard situations of vigilante restroom monitors who have accosted transgender people in restrooms, in restaurants, in private facilities, things like that. So it speaks to the challenge that we have. So we find at the chamber, we have formed a committee called our Government Education Committee that meets every month to ensure that we are providing information and resources so that people can fully understand these laws that have been passed, the current status of these laws that are now being challenged and litigated and defeated in most cases in the courts, and ensuring that as we turn the tide of stemming new bills coming out of Tallahassee, we're striking down the ones that were passed.
Now, you mentioned earlier that this market is unique in Florida in that it is a bright blue bubble in a red state. Have you spoken to leadership in other LGBTQ plus chambers who aren't in such blue communities, progressive communities?
Some, but honestly, I've spoken to the Tampa LGBTQ chamber and South Florida, the travel and leisure folks in the South Florida market, who recently had that amazing float in the Rose Bowl parade. And different parts of the state, and one of the things that does make Florida unique is that we do have pockets that are blue, that are progressive and inclusive. And we do have areas that are extremely red and discriminatory. Tampa, St. Pete area is another area that is more progressive, and the LGBTQ community is doing well there. We have recently seen a great deal of progress that's really come not only from the business community, but through advocacy and through hard work on the public policy area. We've seen a progressive mayor elected in Jacksonville, and we're seeing really a evolution in the Jacksonville market, which is always known for being South Georgia or whatever. And we're seeing that parts of the state that have been historically very anti-affirming and anti-LGBTQ, we're starting to see the evolution of those areas due to amazing work by people on the ground and organizations like those chambers working in those market areas.
Now, we know how the parks, and when I say the parks, I'm talking about Disney and Universal, benefit from the largesse of LGBTQ tourism. They have entire weeks celebrating inclusion and inviting LGBT tourists into the communities. Are you seeing support from those entities?
We are. And interestingly, we recently met with Disney in reference to their joining the chamber. They're already members of the chamber, but joining in a bigger way in reference to supporting our programming and our gala coming up and things like that. And Disney is an active participant and a good example of what a good corporate partner should be. Not only do they have annual events that are, amazingly inclusive of the LGBTQ community, but also they actively work through their affinity groups within Disney, like the Disney Pride organization, their ERG within Disney, and they reward employees for being involved in the community. They want their employees to be a part of the community and be a part of the change and be a part of being inclusive and really walking the talk in reference to Disney being an open and inclusive and a safe environment for everyone. We see major corporations that are partners with the Pride Chamber also doing this. We see major corporations like Lockheed Martin, who Equality Florida has done a great deal of work in the past, has an amazing ERG program where they bring education, information to their ERG members. And Lockheed Martin is a great example of being very visible and come out with Pride every year, being a part of the parade, being a part of the festival. And we see our major partners are standing firm. And they're only able to do this. They're only able to continue to stand firm in supporting their ERGs and having a robust DE&I program through information and education. And that's where the Chamber intersects with our major partners and bring this information to them. We have quarterly summits where we bring in our corporate partners and talk about everything from the weaponization of DE&I to what are the challenges and successes of having a robust employee resource group or business resource group who is interacting with the community, who is supporting the community, who are showing up at school board meetings and supporting LGBTQ inclusion. So we see our corporate partners, while there is a need for information and resources so that the proper information is getting out to our major corporations, we also are seeing that they understand that it's not performative, that they need to show up. They need to walk the talk in reference to supporting the community in word and in deed.
And Gina, can you quantify the economic impact in either Orlando or the Parks region, or is it difficult to triangulate demo spending in that way?
Obviously, it's sizable. Certainly in Central Florida, the vacation capital of the world, and certainly, a hub for LGBTQ people to feel safe and feel like they can vacation here with safety and with inclusivity and being their true selves and enjoying what Central Florida has to offer. Our elected officials in Central Florida, both at the county and the city level, understand the economic impact of travel and leisure dollars in Central Florida and understand the economic impact of not having that and how that would impact taxes, how that would impact residents who live here in such a negative way. So we find that in travel destinations like South Florida, like Orlando, like the Tampa St. Pete market, elected officials understand the economic dynamics of being inclusive, of having an area that is safe and welcoming. And so they support corporations coming to those areas that are like-minded corporations. And then that relates to the community in reference to where they spend their dollars, where they eat out, where they vacation, and it rises all boats. We see that the Central Florida area is thriving, and a lot of that is driven by travel and leisure economic dollars.
And finally, insofar as visitflorida.org, is there any recourse? Will a letter be written? Will meetings be established? Or is this sort of a done deal from their perspective?
No, we're reaching out because this is a concern of our corporate partners as well as our members. And we are reaching out to see if we can't structure a meeting and move the conversation forward in reference to this decision.
Gina Duncan is CEO and president of the Pride Chamber of Orlando. We did reach out to Visit Florida, but we did not get a response. Still ahead here on Engage, we've seen the idea of terraforming Mars in films like Red Planet, Mission to Mars, and The Martian. Realistically, what would it take to make Mars habitable for people? We will talk to the UCF researcher working to answer that question. We're streaming live now at cfpublic.org. You can listen to Engage live on your phone, on our app, or tell your smart speaker to play Central Florida Public Media. This is Engage on Central Florida Public Media. listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Ahead on this program, reggae artist Cacique talks about growing up in Kingston and how his sister's boyfriend inadvertently set him on a career path.
He would take me to school in his car, and I feel so cool pulling up in his car with the bass thumping, and he's playing Natural Mystic Bob Marley, right? And I just remember thinking to myself, man, this sounds so good.
Cacique joins Engage in studio ahead of this weekend's Reggae Day. First, though, Mars is a destination for human exploration and one of the most explored bodies of this solar system, according to NASA, because the red planet can teach us about the Earth and help determine whether life exists elsewhere. Mars is dusty, rocky, and frigid, and people cannot live on it. What if that could change, though? Terraforming it. That's a process of transforming the planet to be more like Earth so it can support human life. There's a researcher at UCF working on a new way of terraforming Mars, and part of that research was just recently published in the journal Science Advances. Planetary scientist Ramsey Ramirez develops atmospheric models that simulate habitable planets. He joined Engage earlier today to discuss the research and the idea of using Martian dust to warm Mars to make it habitable.
If it were easy, we would have done it already. But the reality is that it's very hard. Aside from all the politics, I mean, the politics would make this even more difficult. But just the scientific challenge is pretty insane. I mean, you're talking about taking a planet that, well, at least once was potentially habitable. We think about 4 billion years ago, Mars was a much more Earth-like planet, possibly with even oceans, warm kind of Earth-like planet. Somehow it lost all that atmosphere and a lot of its water, although we think that there's still a lot of water left within the interior of Mars. The problem is mobilizing that water and the leftover CO2 that's also, like, say, locked up in the polar ice caps and actually absorbed into the soil of Mars, how to get all that stuff out into the atmosphere. There was a paper a few years ago, Cacique and Edwards, that thought that, based on everything that we know about Mars, through all the missions that have gone there for the past few decades, that even if we were to release all that CO2 that's locked up in there in the water, it's not enough to anywhere near maybe 0.1 bars of CO2, about maybe 1/10 what is needed to get the surface temperature above freezing, which is important that you get water and you have conditions that are warm enough for us to live in. So that was kind of sobering news. Even if we were to mobilize all that stuff, it still wouldn't be enough. The only way to produce enough warming on Mars would be to actually penetrate the interior, drill very deeply, because we think there may be a lot of CO2 and water kilometers down. But that is nothing that we can actually do with current day technology, at least not feasibly. Mm-hmm. And any project like that, if you wanted a total terraforming of the planet, that would take centuries, if not millennia, to actually get that done. Another thing that the MAVEN mission has actually discovered is that it loses its atmosphere very quickly. The little atmosphere it has pretty high escape rates. When Mars is small, it doesn't like holding on to the atmosphere as well as the Earth does. And certainly, the magnetic field of the Earth helps with that as well. There's a lot of heat production within the Earth, not so much for Mars. You're talking about also trying to actively maintain the atmosphere on Mars over a long time.
Your research involves using resources on Mars to accelerate the terraforming process using nanoparticles in the Martian soil. Help me understand what that means.
It's a big break actually from previous proposals where it was more about bringing big materials to Mars, very expensive things like creating a shield in the orbit or nuking the planet, although there's not enough CO2 there, as I've mentioned, to actually make it warm, even if you were to nuke it. We kind of moved away from that on a new approach that did not rely on using atmospheric CO2, which is not, it's a good greenhouse gas, but it's just there's not enough enough of it on Mars today to really make it warm with our current day technology. So the approach is to look at the soils themselves. So the Martian soils today, the dust in the atmosphere greatly impacts the climate of Mars. And it so happens if we can take that dust and manufacture them to specific sizes and shapes. So we're talking 9 microns long and about 150 or so nanometers wide. These are very small units, very small fraction of a meter, smaller than even your commercially available glitter. These are tiny little particles that have to be a specific size and shape that you can actually, if we can tweak these particles from the soil and manufacture them correctly, these nanoparticles, then you can make them be able to absorb the radiation very effectively.
Okay.
And create this great greenhouse effect. They have to be done just right, which we can do to precision. And what happens is those nanoparticles, when they're created to those dimensions that we specified in the paper from the soil, which is made of iron and aluminum, we can use iron and aluminum nanorods or nanoparticles to do this, that the energy, a lot of it that's coming from the sun, instead of being scattered back to space, it's actually all getting scattered back down to the surface, which is exactly what we need to warm it up enough. You can get those temperatures up, a few tens of degrees, and even get it warm enough that large parts of the planet will be above the freezing point of water. That's important because you get liquid water sustained on the surface. This is exactly what we need, and it makes things a lot easier for things we would want to do on the planet. It's also good for life, right? It's also good for habitability. If humans humans don't like living in sub-freezing, extremely cold climates.
No, that makes sense. And I think humans like me in Florida would especially enjoy not being in those freezing temperatures you mentioned. So the obvious reason sounds like would be to create a habitable planet for humans for doing this, looking at this.
Yeah,
Why?
for humans and for like just Earth-based life. I mean, we'd like to have plants there eventually and animals. I mean, eventually, that's a long-term process, but we're working towards that and at least have something that we can maybe we'll still need pressure suits in the beginning, right? But it's still going to be, the conditions will still be good enough for us to actually do some science there, right?
Can you speak more to that? Just help me understand why I'm sincerely talking about life on Mars and we're not talking about a movie script.
Right. It's kind of like we're not talking about the Martian or something like that. But this stuff like this is inspired from all that great science fiction. But so there's an atmospheric limit called the Armstrong limit. So if you take the temperature of the human body in Celsius, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit to us in the US using the English system, then that's normal to us. But if you convert that to Celsius, that's 37 degrees. So if you go above 19 kilometers or so on the Earth, the pressures will be so low that the water within your human body at that temperature, 37 C, would start to boil. So the liquid water would turn to gas and start to evaporate. And that's not good. With this mechanism, it would help, right? It would help us get the pressure high enough that you wouldn't, hopefully, if we can get above the Armstrong limit, we wouldn't need pressure suits even. We'd have just enough pressure, at least on the surface of Mars, at the mean elevation, to not have the water within our bodies boil away, right? We'd have a thick enough atmosphere to hold our body intact. I don't know if you've watched the movie Total Recall. They took liberty in showing how the problems with Mars, right? That throwing Arnold Schwarzenegger outside and his girl, they fall out of the base and into the Martian surface, and their eyes are bugging out and they're about to explode. It's kind of like that, right? But maybe not as not as extreme. But you would die regardless. It would not be a very pretty sight. So we would need pressure suits, right, to actually work on Mars below that pressure level. But if we can get the pressure above the Armstrong limit on Mars, which our mechanism would help do, in addition to help from CO2 and water vapor and other greenhouse gases that would hopefully be triggered from the warming of the nanorods, then we could potentially get above this Armstrong limit.
Is there a social responsibility to not develop other planets?
That's a very good question. I mean, there's certainly ethical issues, and I think a lot of us are kind of excited about going to Mars and terraforming other planets. I think a lot of us want to do that, but I think a lot of us also restrained in, the ethical concerns of this, right? Whether we should be going somewhere else and spreading out, because there could be life on Mars. So there is some, ethical issues there. What if there's some extant life there on Mars? Should we actually go and start colonizing it or terraforming it? I think, that's a good question I think we should address. But I think in the beginning, like I said, this is not a total terraforming of Mars. What this is, we're probably going to be able to look at things piecemeal once we can go send humans to Mars through processes like these, and maybe on a localized scale, start affecting the pressure of the planet and the temperature and start doing science there. We're going to actually definitively determine if there is life on Mars or not, whether microbial or otherwise, deep within the surface. And then we can answer those questions there and worry about those concerns. But we won't know unless we go there and see. So we need to figure that out. But the other thing is that it's kind of a strange question from my perspective, because we've already been contaminating Mars. In spite of all of our attempts at planetary protection and sterilizing the spacecraft that go there, there's still something that some of our stuff does end up on Mars, right? We do have contamination there. You're not going to completely get rid of it. Any sort of signs that we're doing there and going there and sending rovers and robots there, we've already been doing that. So you've already opened Pandora's box.
Ramsey Ramirez is a planetary scientist and professor of physics at UCF. Coming up, Reggae Day is coming to Central Florida. If you miss any part of our show today, you can always subscribe to the Engage podcast and listen whenever it's convenient for you. This program, like the rest of ours, will be available on demand at cfpublic.org. Just a reminder, we want to hear from you. Let us know what you would like to hear more about, maybe what you're glad you heard. Send us an email to engage@cfpublic.org, or you can send us a talkback on the free Central Florida Public Media app. You are listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. You're listening to Engage on Central Florida Public Media. I'm Sharon Stone. Reggae music as we know it emerged from Jamaica in the 1960s, born of an amalgam of jazz, blues, and rural island church music. The genre became instantly identifiable by that unusual rhythm, with the drums and the bass playing off of that downbeat. The lyrics spoke of life in Jamaica, often driven by political messaging. And from one end of the earth to the other, one name emerges as the king of reggae. You probably know what I'm going to say. Bob Marley. His influence can't be denied here. In these circles, he's Elvis, Sinatra, and the Beatles in one. And it was Bob Marley, a cassette that brought music into Craig Thompson's life. The young teen had spent his life in Kingston, Jamaica. Once that bug bit him, there was no turning back. 2008, he moved to Orlando and started performing under the name Cacique. Today, he leads Shamanic Roots, an Orlando-based reggae band. He's performing this Saturday, and he joined us in studio. Producer Richard Copeland and I spoke to him, and he started the conversation by describing the Kingston of his youth.
It's very, very simple. It's very tropical. A lot of fun, jovial people. We love to dance. We love to sing. You'll hear people walking and singing in the streets, I noticed I didn't see that here when I moved there. It was very interesting that not many people sing out loud in the streets. Like for instance, we'll be in the market in Jamaica, and there will be just a man just walking and singing, and like singing out loud, and everybody think it's cool and it's okay, and sometimes people will even sing along, So there's that type of freedom that people exude in just being happy, walking about.
So reggae started in Jamaica. I want to know how it started for you. Was there a moment that you were hooked?
You know, it's funny, you know. I got into reggae. It's always around me, obviously. Growing up on the island, it's always there. But as a youth, you want to be hip. And so you try to listen to all of the different other musics or genres of music that is not within your culture, so to speak. Like, it doesn't come from your culture. So I first started listening to hip-hop, and I started listening to a lot of Michael Jackson, pop music, you know. But reggae was always around me. It was always in the ether. It was always there. But my curiosity was more so in the other genres of music. But then as I got older and wiser, hopefully, my taste, my palate started to lean more towards the roots of my culture and reggae music, you know. And then it also aligned with the vision that I had for myself, like the message that reggae stands for.
What is that message?
And that message is we have to work on the self before we can help anybody else. And so in the Rasta culture, we do a lot of meditating. So we go a lot inward. And the answers that we seek are within us. And so reggae is telling the people that same message, that we have to, in order for us to be one love and let's get together and feel all right, first we have to heal ourselves, you know? And then we can go out there and spread what we've learned to everybody else and let them understand and say, yo, the healing starts within. I'll share a story with you. I visited, like I said, music has been able to take me everywhere, all over the world. So I've been down to New Zealand playing a gig. And to my surprise, I did not know the impact that reggae had on such a far, far away place. You know, because Jamaica is in the Caribbean, New Zealand is all the way over there, you know what I mean? And I'm walking down the street, walking down the street, and I turned a corner, and I saw this minivan painted in the flag, in the colors of the Jamaican flag, in the streets of New Zealand, just in bright daylight. I'm like, what is happening? It was a little trippy for me, you know, because I've never experienced. This is what I would see maybe in Jamaica for sure. But not the whole van. It was wrapped or painted in the Jamaican flag. And then two white guys jumped out playing reggae music, blasting it. I was like, whoa, this is trippy. So that's, when you speak of the impact, for a small little island of maybe, I don't know, the population probably 1.5 or 2 million now, it's probably more, but very small, you know? For it to have such a tremendous impact on the rest of the world, it speaks volumes about the spiritual connection of the music, because it shows that we all have that frequency within us to vibrate on that spiritual level all at the same time, you know?
What makes reggae reggae? Meaning, how can I know when it's a reggae song, but what is it I'm hearing? How do I know that it's a reggae music?
Boy, that's a tough question, because, I mean, like, there are other genres that may emulate reggae, but it's not necessarily reggae.
Okay.
So, for instance, take like Sting.
Okay.
Or the Police, right? They have a vibe to them that's slightly reggae because of the way they play the guitar. It's like on the up string or the upbeat. So they take that upbeat rhythm and they fuse it with rock. But it's not necessarily reggae, right? But you hear the reggae influence in it. So what really makes reggae? Boy, it's like this. There's an authenticity to it. Like there's a formula to make the song, right? To make a reggae song.
Okay.
However, the delivery and the authenticity of it is what really makes it reggae. You know, it's not just like the beat or how it's played or anything like that. It's just where it's coming from. What's the origin of the song? You know.
Yeah.
When you came here in 2008, ostensibly you looked to connect with other members of the Jamaican community. What did you find?
I didn't find there were many Jamaicans living here at the time. And so that's why I said I started doing bar gigs with like pop bands, you know, and top 40 bands and stuff like that. But I've always been a solo artist most of my career. Like I'm self-taught on the guitar and all my musical instruments that I play, it's all self-taught, you know, all by ear. And so I've developed my skills using the tools that I have. And then I just go out and play, and what would happen is people would actually want to perform with me. So I've never really had to really put in much work in like convincing someone to come and play with me, because it's like this. There's a mutual connection that we share, especially with the guys I play with now.
Did you grow up in a musical house?
No. I just picked it up.
Do you remember the first time you picked up a guitar?
Absolutely, yeah. I was in a performing arts group, and this was what really kind of set my life on the trajectory that it's on right now. I was in this performing arts group, and I've always loved the arts, theater. And while I was in this group, we would do creative workshops. And in these creative workshops, they would give us a guitar or we'd play the piano. But not everybody could. There's only like one or two of us who knew how to do it. But I didn't know how to do it. And I was so fascinated by it. Because I saw how this one guy, when he played it, I'm like, yo, how you fit all your fingers to make that sound like that is... I thought it was magic. And so I figured out that what I'm going to do, I'm going to learn the strings one by one. And so there was a guitar that pretty much broken because it only had 2 strings on it. But I saw this as an opportunity because I was so overwhelmed by all 6. I'm like, okay, I didn't even know you could take off the strings, you know what I mean? This is how fascinated I was with the 2-string guitar. I'm like, if I can learn the 2 strings, then I can learn 2 more. That's put at 4, and then another 2, put it at 6. So I was like gradually just teaching myself, you know? So the 2 strings that were on the guitar were the A string and the D string. And that's when I wrote my first song. I wrote the entire song just playing those 2 strings.
Do you remember hearing a song or an artist that made you say, that's who I want to be? Like, I either want to sound like them or I want to become a star at their size. Was there a sort of like a aha moment on the radio or with an old tape or record?
Well, I can't pinpoint one song because there's so many that really influenced me. For instance, when I was in high school, my sister was dating this guy who had a souped-up car, and it had a nice sound system in the car. But he would only play culture reggae music. So I remember when the Bob Marley CD came out, I can't remember which one. It was the one that has Natural Mystic on it. And that is the first song, I believe, that starts the album. And he would take me to school in his car. And I feel so cool pulling up in his car with the bass thumping. And he's playing Natural Mystic, Bob Marley, right? And I just remember thinking to myself, man, this sounds so good, you know, like the clarity, because he had this the speaker system in his car very well tuned up. And I was just listening to it. I'm like, yo, this goes hard, you know. And then there are other moments when, like on Sundays when we're having Sunday dinner, because in Jamaica we have a thing called Sunday dinner. Every Sunday we have a big cookout. It's almost like what you guys do on Thanksgiving. We do it every Sunday. Can you imagine? Whole heap of work. But anyways, it's so every Sunday we will play the radio, and the music come on the radio would be like stylistics. There will be the happy tones. There will be music from over here, from like Motown, you know, Stevie Wonder. We listen to even Elton John. You know, it was a very diverse musical atmosphere.
Was this on Jamaican radio?
On Jamaican radio, yeah. But of course, reggae is always there, you know, playing in the background everywhere. So it's like the soundscape was crazy. It's like the background music is reggae, but then in the forefront you can hear some other stuff going on. You know?
They'll just pop into and start announcing. They'll do the news. They'll do the weather right over top the music. They've got the sound effects.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
It's kind of like a variety show.
It's a variety show for real. It really is. But yeah, I can't say there was like one moment when I say, yeah, that's it, you know. But it's always been like, because I understand that I'm gonna have to put in work. So I was like, yo, let's get the work done, you know. Let's start. I just wanted to start, so I just started learning how to do it because I didn't have a teacher. So I just started putting myself in that position where I was able to soak up the music, you know.
You will be playing Reggae Day on August 24th at Boxy Park.
Yes, Reggae Day, August 24th, Boxy Park, Lake Nona. And we're going on from 7 p.m. until 9 p.m. So they're going to have a lineup of different acts.
It's a 2-hour set.
Yeah, we're doing a 2-hour set. Yeah. Oh, I guess they can't get enough of the roots, you know? So we're going to bring them all the fruits. We're going from 7 to 9 p.m. Just come ready for a fun time, you know. It's for all ages as well. So you can bring your children with you, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be a great atmosphere, full of love, excitement, people dancing, having a good time.
All right. Can you play us out?
Okay, so this song is called Medicine Woman. And I wrote it as a dedication to the feminine energy that permeates the universe. Get a sip of water.
Of course.
I'm ravaged with pain, and my body falls ill. Medicine I need is not in the makeup of a pill. Frail and incoherent, at a loss for all my basic human skills. I call for my medicine woman. You're everything that I need. You are my medicine woman. You give more love than you receive. Medicine I need is not bottled or distributed. It's not labeled with ingredients toxic and slowly killing me. I want her love. It's the touch in the hands, the kiss of the lips, air that she breathes. You are my medicine woman. You're everything that I need. You are my medicine woman, you give more love than you receive. 'Cause only your love can be the
Cacique leads the Shamanic Roots. They will be playing Saturday at the Reggae Day Music Festival. That's at Boxy Park over in Lake Nona in Orlando.
Now your antihistamine. I don't mean no disrespect to the doctors and the intellects, but the love, that's the best. And she is my drug. Give me my medicine woman.
That is all for today's edition of Engage. We are back Tuesday at 3 o'clock. You can listen to Engage live on your phone, on our app, or tell your smart speaker to play Central Florida Public Media. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sharon Stone. All Things Considered is coming up. That's right after NPR News.
I'd be a fool if I chose to leave. You give more love than you receive. I don't need your drugs. She's what I need. Give more love than you receive. I'd be a fool if I choose to leave.